Hello again, it's Jess or JashiiCorrin, and today we're going to be having a look at how I do my lesson scheduling in my bullet journal. From some of my past videos you may have realised I am a teacher, and I teach secondary science at an all-girls school in Wellington. It was during my first year of teaching that I discovered the bullet journal system, and since then it has been so super helpful for making sure that I'm organised and prepared for all of the things I need to do as a teacher. One of the main things that the bullet journal has really helped with has been scheduling my classes in advance so that I know what kind of materials and resources I'll need well in advance. One style of spread that I now use consistently is my term planner spread. Before I explain how this one works, I'm just going to give you guys a little bit more information about the thoughts that I had before I planned this spread out. Like most places, we have 5 school days for the week, and each of those school days has 6 school periods. At my school we have roughly 10 weeks per term, and the timetable for our lessons are on a 2-week rotation. This means that my class timetable is the same every second week. Because I'm not always the best at remembering which timetable we should be looking at, I wanted a spread in my journal that could tell me at a glance which timetable I should be referring to. Combining those ideas was how I came up with this spread. So as you can see, we have the week number up the top here, along with a line underneath that I can use to put down the dates that week is found on. And then we have large rows for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday and Friday, and each of those are broken up into the 6 individual periods. Each of these boxes can be color coded depending on what class I have going on at that time. And then I have space next to it to write a 2 or 3 word descriptor of what that lesson is going to involve. This makes it really easy for me to see at a glance what kind of things I have coming up for each of my different subjects and how my week is going to play out. I also use this spread as a visual way to see which classes I do have my materials prepared for and which ones I still need to do some work for. Here's an example of my term planner all filled out. This one ran from week 7 of term 1 through to week 1 of term 2. As you can see, I went and put down the dates for each of those weeks in the space that I talked about before, and I was also able to use colour to indicate what the different classes I had were, and also any days that school wasn't actually running. So as you can see, anywhere that I've used this light grey colour was a day that school wasn't running, or one of my non-contact periods. The darker grey was used to section out any time we had assemblies, and then the remaining colours were for my different classes. So we have pink for my year 7 classes, orange and yellow for each of my year 8 classes, green for year 11 biochem, pale blue for year 11 phys-chem, purple for year 12 chemistry, and then dark blue for any study or CAS periods. Because all of these lessons have already happened, you'll see that each of these boxes does have a cross through it. Next week is going to be week 2 of term 2, so I've started filling out this spread as well. You can see that for some of my classes, I already know in advance what we're going to be doing, whereas for some of the other ones, I need to wait and see what we actually get covered in class before I can plan any future lessons. So for example, for my study periods, I know that my students are going to be doing independent study, so I don't really have any materials to plan for that. Because my materials, or lack thereof, are already prepared, I can actually go and put a single line in that box to tell myself that my preparation for that is done. The same goes for my CAS periods, where my students do self-directed reflections. I also know that I already have the teaching materials for year 11 phys-chem for this coming week already sorted. I also know that we have assembly on Monday and Friday, and that I don't have any materials to prepare for those. Personally, I find this term planner spread so incredibly helpful for making sure I know what's coming up in each of my classes, but also knowing when I started topics and what kind of things I did on each individual day. Although I totally love planning ahead, I do try not to get too far ahead of myself because things can sometimes change. For instance, although I have the internal assessment written down here for week 5 in phys-chem, I actually already know that this has to be pushed out to week 7 because of what the other year 11 phys-chem class is going to be up to. Now as I've shown you how I actually use this spread, I thought I'd show you how I used it previously in some of my old bullet journals and at the start of this year. The first iteration that I had of this spread actually started back in term 2 of last year. As you can see, it was similar but slightly different. Instead of having each of the weeks across the top of the page, I instead used the periods. This meant that the weeks ran down the side and the days were individual rows. I did again have my color coding for each of the different subjects, but instead of using a line to cross out when I had the resources ready, I had a box on the side to color in instead. Although I did like this spread, my brain found it a little bit more difficult to process each day reading across the page rather than down. You can see I also stopped using it towards the end because that was around the time I moved into my next bullet journal. It was also around the time of making this spread that I was trying to use a pastel color palette. Although pastels can be totally gorgeous, it really wasn't working for me in this one. It ended up looking quite washed out and didn't really make me enthusiastic about using the page. In my next bullet journal, I started using a color palette and style that more closely resembles what I use now. So similar to what I do now, we have each of the week numbers at the top and then the days of the week running down the side. Instead of using a line and a cross to represent that I have my resources ready and the lesson being finished, I instead used a tick for this spread. So this one took me from week 5 to week 10 of term 2, week 1 through 6 for term 3, and from week 7 of term 3 to week 3 of term 4. By the end of week 3, all of my senior classes had gone on study leave, so there wasn't that much point in actually recording it in this style. You'll see that by this page I omitted the section that had my color code because I found that I was already really comfortable with knowing what each color represented and thus didn't really have much of a need for a code at all. So now we have the layout that I'm using this year. As you can see, the color palette is quite similar to the last one, but some of the colors have been slightly changed. You can see that in week 3 we have a lot of grey space here because the students were on camp week. Although I theoretically could have left week 3 out, I wanted to keep it in just for the sake of completion. As I've already shown you, this continues to week 7 and then through to where I am currently. I also have reserved spreads set up for the rest of the year. Thank you for watching. Hopefully you found today's video helpful. If you had any thoughts, comments or feels, or suggestions of other videos you might like to see me do, please make sure to put them in the comments section below. If you haven't already, you can subscribe to my channel to see the videos I release every Thursday and Sunday. And until next time, bye!